don't trust Marvel. I want to be honest with you about that up front. I'm a guy who ran a production, who sat in the rooms, and who has watched this studio spend 7 years turning the most reliable brand of entertainment into a coin flip. The TV has mostly been really rough. The movies have been second-rate since Endgame, so my default setting with anything stamped Marvel Studios is arms crossed and show me. And then last night, an episode of television assembled a strike team in 90 seconds, killed a character in half a sentence, blew up its own loose ends, and asked me to just ride with it. And I did. No resistance, no arms crossed. I rode along like it was 1997 and I had nowhere to be. The question that kept me up isn't whether the episode was good. It's why I let it get away with all of that. Because the answer says something about this show that almost nothing else on television can claim. What's up, my know-it-alls? All right, this week, we are into episode 5 of X-Men 97 season 2, Weapon X, Lies, and DVDs. Now, real fast, here's the shape of it so we're all on the same page. Wolverine's back in the present, okay? Back on the Bone Claws, and he's getting the old band back together. Maverick, Sabretooth, Omega Red's old dance partner, Lady Deathstrike, the Merc, Kane, and Morph riding shotgun. Now, the mission is a Weapon X lab in the Arctic running illegal experiments again. What they find when they get there is a facility that's already been torn apart from the inside, and the thing that did the tearing did not come from this planet. That's the setup. And that's really all you need. Here's what I actually want to talk about today. Every studio has two currencies, okay? There's money, and then there's trust. Money buys you shots. Trust buys you shortcuts. When an audience trusts you, you can skip the setup, compress the introductions, move at a clip that would sort of get any other show dragged in the comments because the audience fills the gaps in for you. And this episode of X-Men 97 is the first one this season that runs almost entirely on credit. 28 minutes, 4 decades of comics history, a body count an original series would never have touched, and a pace that asks you to take on an enormous amount of faith. Whether that credit was spent well, I think that's the review. And stick around past the index this week because we're trying something new at the end just for the people who stay. So let me walk you through this the way it actually hit me, because I watched this whole thing in real time with a notepad, and the notepad kind of really tells the story. 90 seconds in, there's a helicopter full of killers swapping war stories, and I'm doing the thing where you point at the screen because I know every single one of these people, and I don't mean from the show. I mean from the long box. Maverick walks on, and I'm 12 years old again, holding X-Men number 5, the Jim Lee era, okay? Leon plot and pencils, John Byrne scripting, and here's the detail that really made me put the pen down mid-episode. The one issue isn't just Maverick's first appearance. It's the first appearance of Team X itself. And it's an Omega Red story with Dr. Cornelius pulling the strings. The entire guest cast of this episode comes out of about 6 months of one legendary run. So when I say this episode shouts 90s comic books, I'm not describing a vibe. I'm describing the sourcing. The show was born out of Jim Lee's artwork, and this week, it went home. And the title had already tipped its hand because Weapon X, Lies, and DVDs is a direct sequel to Weapon X, Lies, and Videotapes from season 4 of the original series, the episode that established Team X and the idea that these people's memories were fabricated, implanted, unreliable. That episode famously refused to resolve itself. Logan walks away never knowing which of his memories are real, an open question left sitting in the snow for 30 years. Hold that thought, because this episode answers it. And the show knows exactly whose sequel it is because it jokes about its own title upgrade on screen. Morph marveling that Frankenstein had funding for digital video discs, and Deathstroke sniffing that she prefers Laserdisc. From there, my notes are really just Easter eggs with exclamation points. Sabretooth name drops Graydon Creed, his son, the future Friends of Humanity founder, and calls him a mistake he should have dealt with, which is about as cold as the franchise gets. Deathstrike snarls, "You perverted my father's work," at Cornelius. And if it read like flavor to you, it's load-bearing, because in the comics, her father, Professor Kenji Oyama, Lord Darkwind, invented the adamantium bonding process. Her entire reason for being in this story is hiding inside that one line. At one point, I got genuinely excited that Alpha Flight was showing up. Sasquatch, then Puck, and then, no, that's just Morph. That's just Morph handing out cameos. And later, mid-fight, yes, that was Deadpool on screen. In this show, I need a minute with that one, and I think so does the rest of the internet. Okay. Then the green blood pays off. And I actually said it out loud. Oh, we're getting the Brood. Okay, well, that's kind of awesome. If you don't know them, okay, the Brood were created by Chris Claremont and Dave Cockrum in Uncanny X-Men 155 back in 1982. And let's be honest about that, what they are, okay? They're Marvel Xenomorphs, openly, lovingly, litigiously adjacent to Alien. A hive species with one instinct: survive, okay? That implants itself in the best hosts it can find. So if you felt this episode sort of tilt into straight up horror in the back half, that's not total accident, okay? That's inherited DNA. And I think the comics already ran this exact play. The Brood saga, Uncanny 162 through 166, Wolverine implanted his healing factor at war with the thing growing inside him. The episode takes this premise and welds it to Barry Windsor-Smith's Weapon X, the 1991 body horror masterpiece. And Cornelius crawled out of and then resolves the infection with the one machine in that facility built exactly for 1 million. And here's the craft detail I really can't stop thinking about, because it's the smartest adaptation choice in the episode, and it goes by so fast I almost missed it. Windsor-Smith told his story from the scientist's point of view. Marvel Comics presents number 72 through like 84 or something like that, and is narrated from inside the lab. Cornelius and the professor clocking in, clocking out, running Logan's destruction like a quarterly report, and the horror comes from how administrative it all is, okay? The episode really inverts the camera. The survivors are the ones reviewing the footage now. The victims of the program sit in the wreckage of the program, watching the perpetrator's own DVDs, listening to Cornelius describe them as defective because they always remembered. Same archive, opposite side of the glass, okay? That's a departure from the source material with an actual point of view, which is, I would say, the only kind I ever really asked for. Now, I can't tell you how they animated any of this. That helicopter crash looks stupid amazing, and I have never animated a frame in my life, so I'll stay in my lane. But my lane is the page. I've written animation specs, and a half hour like this is really, it's give or take. 35 pages, go back and count what those pages are carrying. 5 lead introductions, a mission briefing, a crash, an outbreak, a resurrection, a possession, and an ending with something real to say. That math only works one way, and it's the way this whole episode works. Which brings up a distinction I want to make before we flip this thing over. This episode really leans on 2 very different kinds of familiar. The X-Men themselves are a household name now. Okay, I'll put them at the level of the DC Trinity, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, or on the Marvel side, Spider-Man and Cap, okay? That tier of iconography where the general audience, they just know. But that's not the familiarity this episode is spending. Nobody's mom knows who Maverick is, okay? This half hour banks on deep-cut 90s fluency that only some of the audience is really carrying. Universal iconography buys a show reach. Okay, era fluency buys it shortcuts, and shortcuts are exactly, that's where we're headed. Here's the thing about running credit. Bill doesn't go away. It just gets quiet. The team, they assemble in like one scene, Okay, a helicopter, some banter, Morph literally reciting everyone's relationships to camera like a table read of the series Bible.
You and Yuriko used to date. You and Sabretooth hate each other. A classic will they or won't they kill each other.
It's funny, and Morph's delivery sells it, But be clear-eyed about what that scene is. That is the show handing you the character work as a receipt instead of a meal. The lab is already destroyed when they arrive, so the mystery starts mid-stride, in media res, if you will. The episode never has to stage its own inciting incident. Omega Red isn't introduced, he's found in a chamber, mid-plot. And my actual note here reads, seriously? Omega Red's awake now? Because apparently nothing says carbonadium like waking up swinging. And when the paranoia hits and everybody starts accusing everyone of being infected, the only adult in the room is the class clown. I wrote it down in real time. How is Morph the voice of reason in this moment? And I think that's the episode's best running joke that isn't a joke. Then there's Maverick, killed by Brood Wolverine, off our screen, confirmed in 4 words. All right, Maverick is dead, and the episode simply proceeds. The original series never did full-on murder. And this week, Sabretooth snaps a neck on camera and a legacy character dies in a subordinate clause. Okay, we're doing that now? Right on. And I genuinely don't mind the darkness. Ross Marquand, who voices both Xavier and Apocalypse, has been telling interviewers all season how dark this show gets. A lot of people die. Those are his words. Now, what I mind is that nobody checks the math. The episode's exit strategy is an explosion, and explosions are very convenient. We're meant to assume the facility's destruction settles everything, that no brood got out, that the Maverick situation is closed because a sentence said so. That's not resolution. That's a writer trusting the audience not to check the math. And when Wolverine himself may have steered this entire mission toward the Adamantium chamber for his own reasons, Omega Red says it flat out. He's headed the opposite direction from the vehicle bay, and the episode never refutes it. Sorry, Sabretooth I meant. Okay, the story, however, is asking for faith at the exact moment its lead character is breaking it. Here's the part I keep coming back to. I wrote along with all of it. All right, in the moment, every one of those shortcuts played. And it's not because they're invisible. It's because this show earned my trust episode by episode across a season and a half, and Marvel hasn't had that from me in a very long time. This is the first episode that spends more of it than it deposits. And now the part I've really been circling the entire video, because buried inside the monster movie is a real idea. And the episode knows it's there. It just can't afford to sit in it. Listen to what those DVDs actually say. Cornelius' recordings lay out the entire philosophy of Weapon X in 2 sentences.
They always remembered, despite countless memory wipes. In theory, our serum should purge even the most deeply seated memories, resulting in a total loss of identity, and more importantly, total obedience.
Now sit with that. Because it means the Brood plot and the Weapon X plot, they're the same idea wearing 2 costumes. A hive species incapable of divergent thought on one side, a government program trying to manufacture exactly that in mutants on the other. The program erases the memory. The memory holds the self. The self is the only thing these people ever owned. And that's the machine this whole corner of the franchise runs on. And the episode states it plainly and then has to go run from bugs. Deathstrike gets the theme's best delivery. The fable of Tomo, the shape-shifting fox from Japanese legend, okay, aimed straight at Morph. There's nothing Tomo wouldn't become to serve his samurai.
Unfortunately, it did not work out well for Tomo.
That's a warning about a self dissolved into service, told to the one character whose entire power is becoming other people, sitting next to a man whose past was written by a lab. And then the ending, after the smoke clears, Morph, he asks Logan the question, and Logan answers,
I ain't like you, Morph. Some of us gotta be one thing. That's what I'm the best at being.
Doesn't that make you sad? It makes me sad, Logan.
Cut to black. The commenter on last week's video, Patrick Morris 71, pushed back on my read of the Apocalypse 2-parter And it was a good pushback. He argued that the destiny angle works as mythic storytelling. The chosen one goes into the desert and receives a divine boon, except this time it's a destroyer instead of a savior. Fair. And I think this episode is the show answering that same question sort of one level down. All right. Episode 4 asked whether a being can escape a fate that the universe assigned him. And the answer was no. We never stop him. This episode asks whether a man can escape an identity a laboratory assigned him. And Logan's answer is really stranger than yes or no. He doesn't escape it. He enlists it. The claws were forced on him, and he steered a whole mission across the Arctic to get them back. And there's a comic departure hiding inside the choice that sharpens really everything. And in the source material, Logan doesn't take his adamantium back. It's given back by Apocalypse, stripped from Sabretooth and sort of rebonded to Logan as the price of becoming his horseman Death. Now, in the comics, the metal returns as a corruption, a punishment. He's tricked into wearing the show flips the transaction entirely. Nobody makes Logan a weapon this time. He crosses the top of the world to climb back into the cage himself because the cage, it's the only self he recognizes. In the comics, it's a leash. Here, it's homesickness. The one inversion is the whole ending in miniature, and it quietly chains this standalone episode back to the season spine, because if this show ever runs the Horseman play with Logan, it has already shown us he'd walk in willingly. One viewer last week put it perfectly about Apocalypse. He went from getting revenge to being a powerful slave without realizing it. Logan's the counterweight to that. He sees his cage with total clarity and chooses it anyway. And that, I think that quietly is the answer to the 30-year-old question its predecessor left in the snow to be poetic. It no longer matters which of Logan's memories are real, because Logan stopped caring. He doesn't care anymore. He stopped asking. Identity, this episode says, it isn't what you remember. It's what you keep choosing to be. Even when a laboratory did the first draft. That's a genuinely strong idea, and I'll be straight with you about my first reaction because I owe you that. Watching it live, the ending felt a little trite to me. And sitting with it, I don't think trite is the right diagnosis. The idea isn't shallow. I think it's starved. All right, it gets the fable, it gets the DVDs, it gets 90 seconds at the end, and every one of those beats is fighting for oxygen against a helicopter crash, an alien outbreak, a resurrection, and an escape. In a 40-minute version of this episode, that Logan and Morph scene, I think, is the whole point. In the 28-minute version, it's a very good coda on a very fast ride. The theme didn't fail. The clock did. And the clock is the story behind the story this season. So let's talk about it. All right, carefully, with the receipts on the table. Season 2 is a 9 episode. Season 2 is 9 episodes. Season 1 was 10. That's confirmed. That's math. Okay, here's the production history underneath it. Beau DeMayo, who created the show and remains a credited executive producer, wrote season 2 before departing the production in March of 2024. Brad Wunderbaum, who runs Marvel's animation state, told Entertainment Weekly the team was honoring Beau's ideas for the second season. Same directors, same cast, many of the same writers. DeMayo himself posted on X that while he did write a lot of season 2, he had no involvement in production, no rewrites, no editorial, no post. And in September 2024, he claimed something more specific, that his planned 10th episode was removed and that it contained an Onslaught reveal pointing toward Age of Apocalypse. Now that claim is contested, and I want to be real precise about its shape. It's the account of a man describing a room he was no longer in. And the aired season visibly kept a massive apocalypse arc. So take it as one source's perspective, not gospel. Okay, this week's episode, for the record, is credited to writer Anthony Saletti and director Chase Conley, the first episode of this stretch without DeMayo's name on the script. Who did the credited pass? We know. Whose skeleton is underneath? We genuinely don't. But I think here's why the 10th episode question matters beyond trivia. A lot of you spent last week's comment section building the same theory independently, and I was reading all of it, okay? The final mind link between Charles and Eric, Xavier watching his oldest friend atomized, Xavier calling the oldest mutant alive a mistake, half a dozen of you arrived at the same place, that something of Magneto got imprinted on Charles in that moment. And that, its name, is Onslaught. One of you even pulled the deepest cut in the thread that the original series already did the fractured Xavier story, the Dark Shroud, back in the Phoenix Saga, the very story that really helped inspire Onslaught in the comics in the first place. Okay, the old show kept pre-inventing the comics' future. If 97 goes there, it's going to be adapting a story its own predecessor seeded 30 years ago. So the fork is this. Either cutting episode 10 was triage, a tighter 9-episode season that ends where the story ends, or it was an amputation, the removal of the bridge that turned this season's trauma into next season's war. And I'll add one piece of pure speculation, mine, clearly labeled, so hold it loosely. The reporting around DeMayo's original plan says season 3 was meant to rotate focus into Gambit. Now think about what that tells us. The Cajun's not dead. Okay, folks, not in any version of this blueprint. And if the destination really was Age of Apocalypse, a Gambit-centered run through that wasteland writes itself. Okay, he's connective tissue. He's an outsider king in that timeline. And there's even a ready-made move on the board, because when Age of Apocalypse collapsed in the comics, the survivors ported into the main universe, Nate Gray, the X-Man, okay, being the big famous one. A restored Gambit walking that road, taking the Nate Gray role in the show's Matrix, it's not canon, okay? It's not reporting. That's me connecting dots sort of out loud, but I would argue those dots exist. And this episode quietly, by never once mentioning Xavier, by leaving all of episode 4's grief entirely unaddressed, either has a gap where the aftermath should be, or a fuse burning under the floorboards. I know which one I'm hoping for. There you go. Now you know. And if knowing's half the battle, you're halfway to being a know-it-all yourself. What's the know-it-all index for X-Men 97 Season 2, Episode 5, Weapon X, Lies, and DVDs? This is a skillfully woven greatest hits raid on one of the richest corners of 90s X-Men lore. A genuine horror episode wearing a team-up costume with an animation glow-up. A killer morph showcase, a source material inversion that's really smart enough to put the victims on the right side of the glass, and an ending that touches the franchise's deepest question. Who owns the self? Okay, before the clock rips it away, it spends the show's hard-earned trust on real shortcuts, a one-scene assembly, a legacy death in 4 words, a very convenient explosion, and it sits in the shadow of a 10 out of 10 on the know-it-all index. For Weapon X, Lies, and DVDs, it's going to be a 7.5 out of 10. Trust is the one asset Marvel can't animate. And this week, X-Men 97 wrote a check against it, and the scary part is how fast I signed. All right, direct to camera. You know the drill. If this breakdown earned it, hit subscribe and join the nation, like the video so the algorithm keeps finding our people, and sort of sound off below. Triage or amputation? Was the cutting that 10th episode the right call? Now, I'm not sure we can even answer that to the end of the season, but I read everything, and last week's comments literally shaped this episode, which brings me, I think, to something new. If you made it here past the review, past the index, you are really part of the Know-It-All Nation, and I love and appreciate you. So we're going to try something deliberately, a new closing segment where I'm going to answer the best comments from last week's video, because frankly, I think you all are cooking, and it deserves some screen time. First, the callback. I have to take a little victory lap on this one because a bunch of you asked last week why nobody in the past seemed bothered that Logan's adamantium got ripped out of his body, and my answer in the comments was that it had to go on the back burner if they were going to survive the past, and that the show would ultimately deal with it once they hit the present. This week's Previously On was literally the extraction, okay? First scene of the episode. Sometimes the universe is kind, you know? The Mad Titan called a full horseman slate Gambit is death, off Psylocke's casket vision, and that upgraded Archangel tech and Magneto as war. Now, I'm not going to pretend I hate this theory, especially after everything we just discussed. Gambit is death? That's got real textual support piling up. Magneto is war? I'm a little cooler on, only because I think the show has bigger plans for what's left for Eric Lencher. And they may live inside Charles Xavier's head. Scholar Hobbits dropped a mini essay, and the line I want to spotlight is the hope that a corrupted Gambit's redemption runs through Rogue, telling him some things are deeper than skin. If the writer's room isn't already sitting on that line, they should be, okay? That's a free emotional haymaker, and I'm giving it away on a free platform. And from my own watch this week, a rules question worth settling. Morph appeared to copy powers during that fight, more or less, which I think is notable. It's definitely a notable upgrade over sort of the classic Morph, whether it's a permanent power evolution or animation shorthand. I'm sort of watching for it, and I think if you caught a frame that settles it, timestamp it below. That's the first ever Q&A, Nation. If you want this segment to live, you know exactly how to vote. Leave me something worth answering. All right, guys. What an episode. What a week. I can't wait to see you on Saturday where we have a little more time to discuss some things on the Know It All files. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the theories you guys have had and some of the other stuff going on. So make sure you drop those things you want to discuss there in the comments. All right, guys, until this weekend, never forget, everyone loves a know-it-all. Bye, guys.